Creative's Aurvana Ace 2 has some of the hottest new tech in audio.
We'll see about that.
Namaste, we're DHRME, doing honest reviews more energetically.
Before we dive into the detailed performance and tests, let's dwell on the superficial. When we first caught sight of this case, we were kind of wowed by its translucent design, but our initial excitement took a bit of a hit the moment we opened it. Inside, there's this gaudy gold that's hard to miss. Unlike the placement you'd find in the AirPods Pro, these buds need to be turned in your hands once they're extracted from the case. And extracting is about the right term. The buds are not very easy to remove. Despite its lightweight and that transparency pun waiting to happen, the case sports a nice rounded shape that slips into pockets with ease. It still stands on the thin edge despite the rounded shape, which was kind of cool. You're getting USB Type-C and wireless charging, something we always appreciate. Battery life is advertised at 6 hours, and in our tests, we got between 4 to 4.5 hours with ANC on and on aptX adaptive. And that would be a worry for us. Even if you don't have 4-hour-long listening sessions, that battery is going to degrade over time, leaving you with not much time after a couple of years.
But cheer up, it's not all bad news. These are a shallow insertion stem style set of buds, and they feature touch controls which are very well implemented. You can double, triple, or long tap, and each of these gestures are customizable. You can choose between track control, ANC, volume, and summon your voice assistant. Also, the touch controls are very responsive and gave us almost no false taps. There's this area at the top of the stem that has a grill-like pattern, and that's the touch target. A weird thing about volume control though, whenever we turned up or down volume with a long press, there's a tone that's played. And that tone actually is a bit confusing because your music volume gets dropped for the tone to play. So you kind of don't know what's happening in terms of volume. So our solution was to turn off the volume tones, something the app lets you do, and then it was happy days.
What would make our days happier would be if more of you would subscribe to the channel, because it looks like 90% of you are not subscribed. If you do, we'll promise to make more high quality and unbiased reviews on this channel, with a few puns, of course. Okay, moving to the comfort and fit of these buds. The buds come with oval silicone tips, and as these kinds of tips usually are, they're plenty comfortable. However, during longer sessions, I noticed that the left earbud tends to loosen slightly after 20 to 30 minutes. A minor adjustment and we were on our way. But I'm not sure if these are gonna be my workout buds despite their IPX5 rating. They prioritize comfort over grip, and we're fine with that. Creative includes just 3 sizes of tips in the box, which is on the lower side, but it was sufficient for us.
You get adaptive ANC off and ambient modes that you can toggle directly from the buds or via the app. The noise cancelling itself, it's pretty average. In fact, we felt that it was almost amplifying the mid-range frequencies while in ANC mode. We're not sure if this is a feature or a bug, but there was definitely no noise cancelling beyond what even most budget buds give you. Below par for this price point, we think, and we'd put it in tier C.
The ambient mode is another story though. To begin with, it introduces a fair amount of white noise, which you will notice in a quieter space. And the focus shifts again very clearly to the mid frequencies. So voices are in focus, and even though they're kind of nasal, I was quite impressed. Voices get amplified and everything else gets drowned out. Again, the voices aren't natural sounding, but overall we put it in tier A, because even though you might not be able to hear everything, if you're in a crowded bus, these might actually be better than having nothing in your ears at all.
One noticeable miss is the absence of a wear sensor, which you can get on much cheaper buds these days as well. So you're going to have to play or pause your music yourself. There are some interference issues as well. We encountered interference near induction stovetops, for example, when they were active, or near security scanners at the airport. Or if you touched or covered the noise cancelling mics, there was a screeching kind of sound. So just don't do that. The app experience is straightforward and mostly stable, but unlike the buds, the app only connects to one device at a time, so you can't use the app on both paired devices. Overall, the app was stable, and yes, these buds can connect to 2 devices at once. So multi-point connectivity is a highlight, allowing seamless switching between 2 devices. You have to pause on one and play on the other. We'll come to that in a bit, though the lack of a device list in the app is a miss from Creative. There's also a low latency mode on board for you gamers out there.
Before we talk about the microphones, let's see how they perform with our popsicles, icicles, and test.
Popsicle. Icicle. Testing.
1, 2, 3.
The performance in windy conditions was mixed. We got clear audio during my lengthy bike ride, but the buds struggled during Rowan's very windy walk. Check out the full samples on YouTube or Patreon. Then we go to the noisy conditions. With cars whooshing by and background noise, we thought these buds did fairly well.
One observation which we do want to share is that during the windy walk, whenever there were higher pitched sounds like a bird chirping or a bell ringing, those seem to be amplified, making it quite grating to hear. So if you're standing near a drill or a coffee machine, that can get pretty annoying on your listeners. Controls on calls are pretty good with volume control and answer hang up working well. You can't change noise cancelling though, and there's no mute controls while on phone calls for the fuckman out there.
In terms of sound quality, reaching maximum volume is surprisingly easy, particularly in noisy settings. This was consistent both on iPhone and a Snapdragon sound-enabled Android phone. Activating ANC mode seems to boost the bass slightly, but the overall sound profile remains more or less similar. We also felt there was a slight mismatch on both channels, and this bore out in the graphs that you see here. Not as extreme as it looks, but now and then we could notice it. There's a 10-band EQ alongside a simpler bass and treble sliders and 15 EQ presets. There's no spatial audio trickery here, and we wouldn't care less.
The sound signature is characterized by a V shape with a gentle slope off from the bass, occasionally causing vocals to get somewhat lost in the mix. It wasn't as extreme as the Earfun Air Pro 3, for example, and it's tuned closer to the Sony LinkBuds S, except on the high end. So having said that, the treble and mid performance on these is very, very good. I did feel a bit of a sharp spike on podcasts and spoken words with sibilance, but it wasn't enough for me to stop listening to said podcast. There's also no extras on these buds, showing that Creative has a long way to go to catch up with competitors like Soundcore and Earfun. There's no hearing tests, no immersive mode like we said, and no other audio trickery, just good old solid sound.
Now, the biggest deal about these earbuds are the MEMS drivers, right? When we visited the XMEMS suite at CES, the organization that invented these drivers, we learned that these drivers are basically for mid and high frequency sounds. And the biggest deal was that they were very cheap to make and implement, since these drivers can be printed onto a board very easily. One word about EQ. Most of the 15 presets are very good. They're subtle changes that might help you bring out the best in your music and not some extreme demo of EQ. And the 10-band EQ itself was very responsive. I found the treble and bass sliders at the bottom a bit confusing, but I suppose it's useful for people who don't want to tweak every band separately.
XMEMS or not, good audio is always nice to have, and at the end of the day, the audio performance is very good on these earbuds. If this is the promise of MEMS drivers, bring it on.
So, should you get it? Before we get to that, full disclosure, Creative did send out these buds to us, but your support helps us to give you unbiased and independent reviews, since we don't accept any financial compensation from companies whose products we review. So a big thank you to our YouTube members and patrons, and especially our Fuckman Gamma Panda, Hunter, and Paula for your support.
Overall, at 150 euros, this is a good product. But you're buying these basically for sound and comfort. In all other ways, it either just about reaches parity or struggles to reach feature parity with some of the big and small brands out there. So yeah, if you want a good sounding set of earbuds at a mid-range price, sure, go for it. I mean, the new MEMS tech is very, very cool. But if we take a step back, as an everyday set of wireless buds, these are let down by their ANC, volume, calls, and battery life.
Let's look at two other buds to give you some context. A big brand to begin with, the Sony LinkBuds S comes from a premium brand and probably will get you better support and service. The ANC and mics are far superior, and the only place where the Aurvana probably pips them at the post is sound. The Sonys do support LDAC though, which you can use on all Android phones, whereas you only get Snapdragon sound on a smaller subset of Android phones out there.
And then there's one from a relatively unknown brand called Earfun. The budget Earfun Air Pro 3 is about half the price of these buds, and they check a lot of boxes in terms of features and ANC performance. But yet again, when you just listen to music, the Earfuns do not get close to these buds for audio nirvana. Aurvana
Ace?
2. You've been pondering portmanteaus.
And we've been DHRME. Dewey. Popsicles, icicles, and testing, obviously. What were you thinking?